Hello, everybody, and welcome to the online book launch of We Are Singaporeans Volume 2. So my name is Melanie, and I'm the author of the book. And joining us today are a bunch of the people also featured in the book and the illustrator Xin Li. Maybe first off, if I could just introduce Xin Li, if Xin Li could be spotlighted as well, that would be great. And then he can say hi. Okay, no worries. But if not, oh yes, that's Cindy. So maybe I'll just briefly introduce what the book is about, just in case those of you who have just come in. It is really a collection of inspiring interviews featuring Singaporeans who embark upon unconventional work paths that align with their passions and values. The life experiences they share in their respective chapters are then captured as beautiful montages by illustrator Lee Xin Li, who you see here. And, while the interests and experiences are varied, the interviewees' resourcefulness and resilience collectively bring hope and possibilities to youth or anyone who is wondering about their own journeys in life. So right now we have a couple of the people that are featured in this book chatting with us today to tell us a bit more about how they feel about being part of this book and what you can expect when you read about their lives that they're sharing in this book. So firstly, we have Wong Mei-E, and Maye-E is an award-winning photojournalist and editor at the Associated Press Global Enterprise Reporting Team, which is based in New York. So right now she's struggling to stay awake, but we thank her for her time that she's made our afternoon to join us. You might have seen some of her North Korea photos because she was basically AP's point photographer for their burial, don't pronounce that, and has covered major world events such as the Olympics, the tsunami, and the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. So we have Maye-E, hello. Okay, and
everyone.
Hi, is Darius? Darius is here? Yes? Okay, so if Darius is here yet, let me check. Yes, hi, Darius. So Darius is an award-winning choir conductor and composer, and is the founder of Artistic Director of Voices of Singapore, which is a charity organization that seeks to build up a singing Singapore. He is well known for his Singapore Virtual Choir Initiative, which you guys might have seen. It's the viral performance of 900 Singaporeans singing Dick Lee's Home during that time last 2020, where it went viral because this performance helped to lift people's spirits during the pandemic. Next up, we have Felicia Low-Jimenez, and Felicia is the comics publisher at Difference Engine and is the best-selling co-author of the popular Sherlock Sam series. She has been working with books her entire career, and she was previously a merchandiser and marketer of books. Hello. And then we have Debby, and Debby is a conservation biologist and photojournalist. She founded the Hantu blog, which documents Singapore's natural marine heritage, as well as the Himalayan Mud Project, which mobilizes local communities to protect wildlife in Nepal. She has also recently authored Marvelous Mammals, which is an illustrated alphabet book showcasing lesser-known mammals of Southeast Asia. Hi, Debby.
Everyone.
Yeah. And then we have Sharul, who is a full-time stand-up comedian. And she's the first Singaporean to ever have performed in the prestigious Melbourne International Comedy Festival. So besides all her wonderful stand-up performances, she also has created and acted in special productions such as Crazy Poor Sita and Am I Old, to highlight social issues in Singapore. Thank you, Sharul, for joining us today as well.
Thank you.
And then we have Samantha. Samantha is an acclaimed theatre director and is also the artistic director at Gateway Arts. She won the Live Theatre Award for Best Director in 2005 and is also an adjunct teacher at LaSalle College. Hi, Sam. Yeah, so these are the people that we have today. And maybe just for those of you who are a bit curious, who are the other people featured in the book, I'll just quickly run through them. We do have Mothership Managing Editor Martino in the book as well, Urbanist Adib Jalal, the Fossa chocolate founders Chua, Charis, Chia, and Yilina Leong, as well as Kenneth and Adeline Thong of The Last Resort, and that's basically a homeless shelter for youth who have nowhere to go. And we also do have a previous volume of book, but we're not doing that today. We're going to really hone in on to this particular volume of We Are Singaporeans and focusing on the panelists who have joined us today. So I'm just going to ask a question, and maybe you guys could go around in the order that I introduced you, and I'll call your name basically, but it'd be good if every one of you can answer the first question I'm going to ask you, which is, why did you agree to being featured in this book? And what do you hope readers will learn from your chapter? If I could maybe get Maye to start first, that would be great. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Being first is always a lot of pressure. But then again, I'd rather be first than last because everyone's going to give such great answers and then I feel even more pressure.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, I speak for myself, right? When I was asked to be part of this book, it was like an opportunity for me to give back and share with friends and younger versions of me, perhaps, or people out there who were, like thinking about their future, right? And it was a very interesting process for me to also process my own journey. And I think what I treasure a lot is when people share their experiences. And through that, we kind of help to carry each other. And I find like, first of all, I'm very excited to be in this space, right? We are a bunch of very different, almost eccentric, talented people who have kind of broken away from the norm and kind of pursued our dreams, definitely, in this area, So I'm also proud to be Singaporean, having traveled around the world all my life. And I used to be an athlete as well. So there's a little bit of like the national pride in there where I would represent Singapore in sailing. But I think at the end of the day, I'm very appreciative of where I come from, seeing a lot of destruction and doom and gloom out there. So I also want to champion and encourage other people, to pursue their dreams. And I think this is a great reflection on that, and hopefully it will encourage other people.
Thank you, Maye. Darius, over to you, if you still remember the question.
Well, thanks so much for having me. No, it's been a real honor, just exploring and revisiting my past. I think the reason to why I agreed on doing this sharing of probably my life story and my creative journey towards becoming a conductor and composer and also starting Voices of Singapore was because I hope to share and inspire people who are in the music scene, to give them opportunities to explore themselves and also share with them my road, to discovering the core of what truly represents me as a musician. So I think, in the book, I do share about my struggles as well as my journey that I took since I was 17, when I first entered into music school, and how that journey sort of led to me building Voices of Singapore and to the projects that we did thereafter. So yeah, I hope this is an inspirational, story that will help musicians and people who are considering a life in music, to give them some ideas to move forward.
Thank you. Thanks, Darius. And yeah, I really, because I was a former choir girl myself, I really appreciate the work you do and how music blesses, everybody, the people who participate in your choirs. Felicia, how about you?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I was a little bit hesitant at first when Melanie invited me to be interviewed because I don't feel very wise most of the time. And a lot of the times I feel like I lived my life very randomly, just propelled, I think, by my love for like books and storytelling and reading. But then like as I thought about it a little bit more, right, I realized that when I was a kid, I never realized that this could be a viable career option for me. Because like many other Singaporean kids, right, if you do well in school, you're streamed into science, you'll be a lawyer, a doctor, something like professional. And if you wanted to be a writer, it was something that you do as a hobby. So I guess what I wanted to do was to share my experiences, all the years I've worked in the book industry, and maybe inspire like young people to realize that this is a viable career path. Like even nowadays, when you tell people you're a writer, they're kind of surprised because one, they assume that you can write full time, and two, they assume that maybe it's just a hobby that you do and it's not a real job. So I think that's something that I wanted to change, especially with kids nowadays. And I think also I just wanted to talk more about comics. Yeah. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Felicia. And Debbie, how about you?
Well, I think quite similar to Felicia. When I was invited to be a part of this, I was a little bit excited, a little bit scared also. Feeling like, how is it I qualify? But then I realized that similar to Maye-E, it was really a rich opportunity to reflect on the process. And I guess growing up, since I was 8, I just loved watching people and how they interact with animals. And I've always been led by those questions. How do we interact with animals and how can we improve this interaction? Oh, that was the cat leaning on the keyboard. I'm sorry. So how do people interact with animals and how can we improve this relationship? And so I struggled for a long time, deciding should I take a path of science or should I take a path of art, because a big part of communicating with people really was an art. And so that led me to dabble in both fields, which led to me being really confused. And only much later did I realize that, we didn't need to take one path, we can take many paths and then put all of these skills together to create something. And so I think putting that down, in a book and sharing with people how sometimes, it may seem like you don't have focus, you don't really have a goal, because as Felicia mentioned, we're also used to some very tight and narrow streams, path streams, but really we can actually create our own streams from all the different skills that we find along the way. Yeah, so thank you, Melanie.
Well, thanks a lot, Debbie. Yeah, and Sharul, you want to answer the question? Thanks, Sharul.
Yes, thank you. So when I was first asked to be part of this book, I think this was an opportunity to also somewhat educate, hopefully Singaporeans and youngsters growing up, the difference between stand-up comedy and comedic acting, and also that stand-up comedy comes under art, because for the longest time it was placed under variety show or drag show, which is still, of course, a lot of hard work, which is what Kumar has been doing over the years. So, I wanted to let the readers know that there is a hope for women to jump up and do joke writing, and also know that this is a proper art form as well. And also for people to know the difference between comedic acting, which means, when you write a script for another character and they are playing the character on stage, and stand-up comedy, which is also, riffing with the audience members and be able to come up with your own material as well. So thank you for the opportunity that I could actually, put the message across in this book.
No worries. So Sharul's one of my favorite comedians. So, which is why maybe I was a bit biased when I said, oh, she had to be in this book, because I really do think it is an art form that brings genuine happiness to so many people. So thank you so much, Sharul.
Thank you.
And we have Samantha next.
Hey, hi, yay! I was excited because I was never an academic kid. I had to study really hard, and that was with my mum standing next to me saying, you have to study. And I was just always passionate about theatre and music and literature. And in school, you don't really know that can be a future. And I pursued it, and I just was so excited to have an opportunity to share that with the youth out there today, that you might have an interest in something and that can turn into something great, and you don't always have to have the top scores in those other things that you're not so interested in. So I was excited about sharing that success. And of course I was excited to be illustrated. Yay! That was so exciting too when Mel told me about it. So yeah, I hope this book does inspire the youth of today to really kind of go for their dreams.
Thank you. And you talking about the illustration actually leads me to asking Xin Li, like why he chose to agree to this book, because Xin Li is a very acclaimed artist. He has many huge commissioned projects. So Xin Li, could you tell us about why you wanted to also be a part of this small little book series that Marshall Cavendish put out?
I think it's a meaningful project, especially when this project started out during the pandemic. A lot of people across the fields were all affected, and the future seemed very uncertain. So the whole series, when it started in the previous book, and there's these interviews that from everyone from different sectors sharing their experience and how they cope with the challenges. And I think we will reach out to many fellow Singaporeans or even people abroad on these shared challenges. Thus, I thought that is a meaningful project, and I agree to be part of it. And also, it's also an opportunity for me to learn more about the people beyond my field. So it's not just meeting fellow illustrators and the local scene, and also know a bit more about the arts, the performing arts, people who did humanitarian work, like previous one that was trying to do, then and how everyone has a different path to where they are now. So for this one, is that the one of the group is Fossa chocolate. It's like, oh, I also like food. so there's also this personal interest. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so I think my second question to you is, I think inevitable because, we are living in these such times, but I actually wanted to find out a bit more about how you guys have basically been adapting to all these pandemic related changes in the past year. I know for some, it really has impacted your nature of work. And I think a lot of us, whoever's listening in or, even as us talking together as a group right now, have had to make adjustments both internally and externally as well. So I just want to find out about how you have evolved in terms of your work vision based on all these upheavals in these past 2 years. And I think your answers will probably also help the listeners or the viewers out there understand, like different approaches to adapting to these constant changes and constant obstacles. Maybe if you could go around back to Maye-E first and tell us a bit more about how your work situation is like now.
Well, I thought a lot about this question that has been asked to me before, and my answer would be very anticlimactic, so to speak, in the sense that whenever news happens, we're always there. And I guess if you talk about COVID itself, that is part of the news, right? So it's like, I understand for theater, it shuts down and then you just cannot be in the theater. For us, when SARS happened, we were there to cover it. When COVID happened, and I'm here in New York, so it might be a little bit different. I mean, it was really bad here, but we as journalists, we still have to be, you see a burning house, people run away, but we have to be a bit crazy and run towards it. And that's the only way to cover the news, is to be at the news. I think the thing that everyone struggled with across the board, that it was so unknown and it was so much that we didn't understand about the pandemic at that point, right? So there was, of course, a lot of fear, but I would say that fear is the same kind of fear that you feel when you go and cover like a tsunami or, war or a riot, where your life is constantly in danger. And I think for us is that I had to adapt differently. And it's almost scarier than a bullet. Bullet you can dodge. Virus you cannot really dodge because you don't know where it is. So that element of the unknown made the job more dangerous. And we just had to follow the rules. So, there's a lot of complaining and there's a lot of people that were very upset at first, right? But I think at the end of the day, we are all resilient as human beings and we adapt. And then, we struggle to follow new rules, but then after that, we get used to them. I think the bigger struggle is adjusting back, right? I mean, I'm sure to some point, all of us have become a little bit of a germaphobe. And it's very interesting to watch the children as well now who feel very insecure without their masks. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think at least for us in the news business, it doesn't change our work nature because we still have to be there. It's just maybe different precautions, different situation. That's all. Yeah, and you kind of have to think outside the box. For me, I'm going to answer. It's like, how do I cover this and still maintain the distance and go through the city that has a curfew in the safest way possible because there was no public transport. So, I would like pair up with a colleague and we'd take the motorcycle and ride around the whole of New York City with no traffic jams. Amazing. But at the same time, you can work fast and work smart and stay safe. So just have to adapt, basically.
Thanks a lot, Maye-E. Felicia,
Hi.
how about you? How did you adapt, Felicia?
I think it was very, very challenging because with Difference Engine, we were a new comics publishing house. And when we launched our first book, immediately we went into lockdown. So the entire team and we had to relearn how to sell books and how to launch books online. And Zoom was not something that we understood. We didn't realize how difficult it was to plan a Zoom book launch, as I think like Melanie and Xin Li and the Marshall Cavendish team knows. But also it was really hard for our creators that we work with as well to keep up the regular pace of work because everyone was just everyone was reeling. We thought that, in 3 months, 6 months, kind of similar to SARS, that things would normalize and things would go back to normal. But as we headed towards the end of 2020, was it? Time is has less feeling nowadays. But as we headed towards the end of 2020, we realized that we weren't going to emerge from it yet. So we had to relearn how to work. I personally was a new boss and I had to learn how to manage a team under pandemic conditions, which was very challenging. And as a writer, my husband and I, we co-write the Sherlock Sam books. We spent a lot of time working with kids, in workshops and in schools, and we couldn't meet the kids face to face. So we had to learn how to engage with children online and figure everything out. And as writers, we spent a lot of time doing research outside, not as excitingly as Maye-E. I think we don't go into we don't have to ride into an empty city, though that sounds really exciting. But we spent a lot of time physically running around doing research. And I think I was actually in touch with Debby about writing a book that would require us to take a little boat around the islands in Singapore, but we couldn't do that. So we had to relearn how to write. And I think that the stories that we've written since the pandemic started, we probably wouldn't have written if we hadn't lived through or are living through a pandemic right now. So I think what Maye said also about readjusting back to what we call normal life is hard because even though Singapore is opening up, I still feel worried and a little bit scared, and I see it reflected in the kids as well. So that's kind of a little bit painful, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely the pain has to be addressed as well as a way of moving forward in this new life with less restrictions. Darius, if hopefully your sound is getting better, Darius, I'd love to hear more about how have you been adjusting? I mean, especially lately, I noticed you're tentatively putting out more performances. How are you adjusting in terms of still reaching your work goals, but still adjusting to all the different changes in the performing arts scene?
Right. Well, I think first and foremost, singing was probably one of the most hard hit sectors in the world. And when COVID first happened, I think all of us were completely devastated, and my entire team, we were like, what are we going to do with all our programs? And we had singers dropping out, and our spaces were just completely empty. So we were very troubled. I think we went through this whole phase of sort of ideating and pivoting, and finding new ways to engage the people and engaging people through our different programs. So I think the learning of the new tech was a very steep uphill learning curve that we sort of managed to navigate around, and I really thank God for this new technology called Jack Trip, where we can sing together online without any latency issues and lag. So choirs can hear each other, So that's how we navigated around our spaces, and our inability to sing. And also, I think the virtual choir that we did with the 900 people sort of spurred us and the company into a different direction. So it was the breath of fresh air, and also a huge sigh of relief for us in the past 2 years, where we were able to think of new ways to engage people and thinking out of the box when a lot of people sort of gave up on singing and couldn't do it. So right now, as we are moving hopefully out of the pandemic, we are starting to reopen new performances. And I think this, if it's anything for the art scene in Singapore, it's really helped us to rethink about our purpose as musicians and as artists, our core and what really defines us. What do we want to do with our lives now that, COVID has sort of readjusted the entire spectrum of what we actually want to do. And I realized that, for me personally as well, I've been driving towards something that I might not have necessarily wanted to do. I was just doing it just because everybody was doing it. So I guess, this whole pandemic has also helped me to find myself and my identity as a musician and as an artist. So right now, we are moving into interdisciplinary art, where we combine paintings with singing and acts with singing, and also fashion with singing, and just like redefining the whole essence of what it means to be Singaporean, so that our voices will be not just heard, our voices will be seen, our voices will be remembered in different and many ways.
Sounds exciting. Thanks so much, Darius. And Debbie, how about you?
Yeah, the pandemic really upended all my plans, everything. I was actually in the US doing science communication work at a university in Montana at that time, when the pandemic was breaking out before it was announced that it was a pandemic, when it was just emerging in Asia. And I was actually in a disease ecology lab. So every day we had all these modelers that were doing the math and basically looking at the ripples of the wave. It's like a tsunami. When we look at it on a graph, it's basically like a tsunami that's approaching us. And it really, at the time, I was planning to go back to Nepal to start one of the community projects. So all my work involves meeting people, being out in the field, much like Maye-E. The work doesn't happen behind a desk outside. That's just after you go to the field and collect the information, meet the people, do the work. And I had the ticket, and I was just transiting through Singapore to get to Kathmandu, and then all the borders shut down. So after that, I did not have any plans because all my plans could not happen. And I found myself suddenly stuck in Singapore without having planned to actually come back yet. So I had to, it was a really difficult time because it sounds strange, but feeling displaced in your home. I had family and friends here, but it's something when you're ready to come back, and then you even have a place to stay. I didn't even have a place to stay, and so I was just staying with whoever had a spare room for me. And then it was also lockdown, so it was not like you're back in Singapore and you're outside enjoying your friends' company and eating local food. I was actually home in Singapore in a room for right in the middle of the circuit breaker. So it was really quite a stark way to come back home. But very quickly, and thanks to technology, like Darius was saying, thanks to technology, we try to connect. And I think in Singapore, we're so lucky to have access to that technology. I mean, imagine, or if for myself, that I even had a room to stay in with somebody that could keep us safe. That was really important. And so with technology, we managed to reconnect with field biologists and conservationists around the world to just share what everyone is going through. And I think that network was really useful for us, all of us who are in similar situations, just knowing that we were not alone in that situation. Many of us were unknowingly displaced, and we're having to figure a way out to reconnect with our communities and our work, which depended on that connection. And reassuring the communities that they were not abandoned, even to today, is still now very difficult. It's just because, one moment there was so much presence. We were there all the time. We were responding all the time, like literally in front of them. And suddenly we were not there. And in many of the communities that I work, they don't have the similar access that we do, where we can feel so easily connected technologically. And even in Singapore, my work with the community, with the Hantu blog, is to bring people out to appreciate nature and learn about nature. And we couldn't do that. And it was very difficult, especially because we had to be on a boat, and boat limits were not suitable for us to be on such a small space on a boat with people. And so we couldn't do our work, the work that we thought we had planned for ourselves. So we had to reinvent what kind of work we wanted to do, a way to keep people informed, engaged, without actually having to physically meet them. And so again, thankfully, after we came to terms with what was happening with the pandemic, and then, found the tools that we needed to reconnect, it really helped me to reconnect with the conservation community here, to feel that, okay, I may have been displaced, but now it's time to make those reconnections again. And having that community to quickly connect with really helped me, and it's still helping me get back on my feet personally, as well as reconnecting with the community. So it's still a work in progress, I guess, as we're still figuring things out and as things continue to shift as we move along.
All the best, Debbie. But always really impressive, all the work you do. Thanks so much. And how about Sharul? How have things been these past 2 years for you?
Okay, so, how have things been? Okay, so firstly, of course, with stand-up is such a medium where you need feedback. So people need to laugh back at you, and that's how you work. And that's how the medium works. But I think as Singaporeans, even as artists, we very much as Singaporeans, we like to put ourselves in a box. We want to be purists, right? We even being trained in drama school, I know even all my artist friends, they want, the theatre has to be perfect, the lighting has to be perfect, the acting, the theatre, everything has to be in order. And that's how as Singaporeans we are. So when the pandemic hit, and we were stuck in a home, we had to immediately, of course, technologically get everything ready, because now corporate shows were saying, can you do stand-up on Zoom for clients? And we had to mute them because, of course, there were too many, everybody had kids running around, cats, kids, and we had so many people reacting and so many things happening in the background, so they had to be muted. But what I realized is, we would be doing our jokes, they had to keep the chat open, but I realized that Singaporeans, because we were so scared to communicate with each other, they communicated a lot via haha, lol, I like this, they got so used to going, yes, this is, so it gave them a chance to express, especially Singaporeans. So that thing worked, that worked for us. My partner and I, we got a lot of stuff online from China, and we quickly set up lighting, and we even got experimented with different gels. So that was nice. But the other thing that happened was, because I'm originally trained in theatre, but I never got an opportunity to sort of really get into the scene because I didn't go for enough auditions. There were also not enough roles, I think, for women of color at that time. I think it's really opened up now. That when I got an opportunity to work with Aware, which I really wanted to do, was, change their reports into plays, right? And one woman plays, primarily because the budget was really low. So, I was writing and meeting all the beneficiaries, writing, self-directing, and then self-putting up everything. So when this hit, I asked myself a question. I said, what is stopping me from performing this on Zoom? Of course, this is still not going to be like pure theatre, as we're not doing pure stand-up naturally as well. But I got an opportunity to do Am I Old on Zoom, which, of course, ST picked it up as the first play or whatever that was done. But, it's not fair to say it's the first play, because it takes a lot more to do a play. but I got an opportunity to do the play on Zoom from my room and set it up and learn so much about performing for this medium, in a square and, keeping their attention without making it funny because it's a serious play. And of course, having people to write their emotions out, because when you're watching a play, of course, you don't break the fourth wall. In comedy, you do it. So here you had people writing like, that's so emotional. Oh, I'm crying. This has happened. So they were actually reacting to each. I could mark the emotional journey of my character via the chat. So I feel that was very enriching for me. I learned a new skill. And also, I think maybe I got better as a writer because I had to write out jokes, type out jokes and edit it and put it on Instagram. So
I remember those posts. Yeah.
Yes. So you can't do long posts. You have to do short jokes. And I think maybe that helped me be better as a writer because I'm more of a performer, a writer. But now I think I've kind of pivoted, a favorite word of pandemic. Pivoted.
Yes. That sounds like a great pivot, though.
Yes, pivot. Yeah.
Yes. And thanks so much, Sharul. And I think that'll be interesting to hear what Sam has to say because Sam is in theatre. So, yes. Sam, did you have to let go a lot of things these past few years, months?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think like Sharul and Darius, I'm proud to be a part of an industry that at the core of our DNA, you're familiar with adapting. I mean, artists know how to adapt last minute. It happens on stage. You just have to go with it. Like Sharul said, the light doesn't work. What are you going to do? You just have to work with it. And more than that, I think artists are eager to take a situation and work with it. Or even as Maye said, think outside the box. So, it's there, but how do you use it? So when theaters closed, I think we were all just devastated, absolutely devastated, because no live audiences meant no work, and it was like, who's going to pay us? What are we going to do with ourselves? So adapting was just, okay, you've got to pick your brain and see see what you can do. And for me, I'm just one story. I run a weekly storytelling club for kids under the age of 9. And every week we have about 70 kids come and flock the place. And suddenly we couldn't bring that to them. And that was really, that was tough for us. So we thought, okay, what are we going to do? We have 5 days to reach our audience. And I called up an actor, Dwayne Lau, and I said, I've got to film storytelling. Can you do it for me in the next 2 days? And of course, that spirit, we all have that passion to make it happen. He said, okay, let's do it. So we sent him lights and we sent him a microphone, and I got on Zoom and I said, okay, I'm going to direct you. And it just had to happen. And you don't really have time to think about it. You just have to do it. Fortunately for me, I have had experience as a film director, and I've done short films, I've shot TVCs. So I was familiar with this kind of medium and what we could get out of it. So I just had to kind of flex those muscles again. And I think that's with any field. You have to adapt, you have to change, and then work on a new muscle that makes everything work. So even though it was a really crazy time, we all learned, and I certainly learned a lot about what can actually be done. So it wasn't so devastating in the end.
Thanks, Sam. I think it's interesting because you mentioned the earlier kind of production work you did was, like your way of just trying to, broaden your work scope, but you had to bring it in back to your core practice in the end. So it's like these unexpected connections, and that's nice. I did notice that, especially for the bunch of you who are here today, a lot of you did bring up the idea of mentors in your life story and how they played such critical roles in your journey to, the kind of work that you love to do today. Maybe I just wanted to find out more from you in terms of what is the most valuable thing you've learned from your mentor in terms of, and how you apply it to your work today. I think it's quite nice to see those, intergenerational connections. If Maye-E, if you're okay, maybe could you try maybe attempting this question as a start?
I like the way you say try, because that's what I'm going to try to do. I will try. Before I go on to answer your question, and not to belabor the point about the topic that we spoke about before, but I saw a common thread in this room, which was actually very comforting. And it's like, okay, despite COVID exacerbating the inequality that's already out there and suffering, right? And I think it just blew up everything like disproportionately. It also gave birth to a lot of creativity. And as Sam, Sharul, Darius, and all that said, it's like we just had to adapt, right? And also, given all the deaths and all the loss that people suffered and that we were faced with every day, for me here, thousands were dying. There were like makeshift refrigerators outside mosques and stuff. It's like, you know what? I'll take a birthday celebration over Zoom anytime. Okay, I think we're pretty fortunate with that. So I just wanted to leave at that thought, because I think we need to realize that there is something that we all are trying to celebrate in this book here, right? Of creatives, and I think it doesn't just take the people here. I think generally as a country and as a global situation, we all kind of adapted. Now, mentorship. Oh, gee. I have been very fortunate. Okay, so my line of work is like, my parents were both teachers. So they expected me to go to junior college, become doctor, lawyer, the typical. I am 42 years old, so I'm of that generation where if you do what I do, it's like, how are you going to survive, right? And I was very, very blessed to have photography and graphic design friends, right, in my community that were very generous with their time and taking me under their wing to kind of explain what they do, and also just allow me into that world. I wouldn't say, like you mentioned, in the generation and in the upbringing that we have, and they're not like immediately, okay, let me show you that you're going to be a trailblazer, you're going to do this, women empowering. All that's just starting to happen, and it's still trying to happen. And I champion you, Sharul, for talking about that and empowering, being the first woman of color to do stand-up. I'm very, very proud to know you now. I will say that in little ways, I was very, very blessed to have friends who encouraged me, despite the fact that photography cannot make money on what, and take me under their wing. And I think that goes to show that anybody can really be a mentor. You don't really have to have that special teacher skills. I think as long as we are generous with our craft, with anything, with life skills, with decision making, with just advice, right, to anybody that needs it. And I had that in little bits and pieces from different people that I came across or interacted with at some point in my life. And I think it was a collection of all that kind of, in disguise, encouraged me to nurture that interest and actually to try it, because you know what, he's doing it, so can be done what, so it's just that the glimmer of hope. I don't think it's a formula for me of like, okay, I'm going to name you this photographer who I studied, because at least for my job, it's very, photography is part of life and life is part of my photography. So you pick up little things. So I think I'm very blessed to be surrounded by people who are very generous. And that kind of makes me think about my own role now as I mentor younger generation photographers. But with the added layer of, okay, this is my time to empower women photographers, because essentially it's also a boys' club. So in a very long-winded and not very specific way, I am answering your question. And I tried. Not bad. But not bad, right? I mean, it's not just one mentor. I give you like 10 different people. that touched me in my life in a different way. But what I'm trying to say is we should all be cognizant of that power that we have, right? To be able to mentor different people, because you never know what they need in that time of their life. So yeah, something like that. I tried.
Yeah, lots of wisdom there. Thanks so much, Maye-E. How about Darius?
Well, I have had many good mentors and teachers in the past. But I think, for me, what really sort of affected and influenced my experience and what I'm doing now actually is the experience of living through a period in Wales, in the UK when I was studying there. And I mean, I just felt this great sense of identity in the Welsh when I was living in Wales, especially during their rugby matches and stuff like that, where the entire stadium would sing, national songs, and it was just like completely inspiring. So those experiences really sort of, taught me to and brought about that idea of building and singing Singapore, and I had a very, very good mentor who is now the conductor of the BBC choir in London, who told me that, it's really not about the matter of breaths you took, it's about the moments that took your breath away. And I really stayed true to that. And I really feel like it's so important that, we as artists continue to recognize the fact that, we are inspiring people to live better in whatever art forms and whatever ways we are doing, and I stand true to that phrase till today.
Thanks so much, Darius. Felicia?
Yeah, for me, it was like I had people who gave me opportunities that I didn't know that I needed or I wanted even. I was always like kind of socially awkward, and I would prefer to read and write by myself instead of like mixing around in people. But I had people in my life who gave me chances when maybe it was kind of like something that I didn't expect. And so someone gave me this opportunity to become like a fiction merchandiser. Someone gave me an opportunity to become a writer. And someone gave me this opportunity to run a comics publishing house. And these were things that I never thought that I would be able to do. So I think like what I got away from that, right, was especially with the work I do with Difference Engine, is that I actively look for people who maybe would never think about being a writer or never think about working in comics. And I try my best to convince them that they can be a writer and they have a story to tell. And even if they're not ready right now, we will work very closely with them to make the best possible comic that we can. And I think that's what I got from all the people who gave me chances when I didn't know that I wanted it at that time.
Thanks, Felicia. And Debbie, how about you?
Wow. I mean, I think I resonate with so much of what Felicia and like Maye has said. As I was sitting here thinking about it, I think, now in hindsight that I'm older, looking back at how my community supported me, it was hard to support me because I myself couldn't describe what I was pursuing. I didn't know what I was pursuing. What I'm doing now is something I never dreamed of, not because it's not good, but because I didn't even know it existed. And at that time, it's hard for, when I was so excited and passionate at such a young age, people are just confused, like what's happening, right? You're not supposed to be. I mean, I was my first public outreach event was when I was 9, and I was at Earth Fest, and I was telling people how agriculture was leading to deforestation. And that's not really a conversation people have with like 9 or 10-year-olds. So it was quite difficult for me. And looking back now, I would say, even though people like my mom and dad, they didn't understand what I was doing. They didn't think I could be paid to do this, like me. Like, what kind of living are you going to make out of this? But now I see that even though they didn't really quite know how to support me, they didn't stop me either. And I think that is quite powerful. They didn't say, stop, put that book down. They just perplexed on their own. And I think now I'm grateful that they didn't stop me from going outside, didn't stop me from exploring, even though when I came back, they couldn't really have a conversation with me. But now, like when my mom, sometimes she watches a documentary on TV about tigers or something, and then she'll send me a text saying, "Hey, I saw a documentary about tigers and I'm thinking of you." And that kind of it's just a small connection that makes me feel like, okay, they understand. And similar to Felicia, I think that sometimes the community, the mentors, you have to find them, and sometimes it can be hard to find them. And I think my message to anyone who's listening, who may be trying to do something that they feel that they know what they like, but there isn't quite a name or a label for it, to try and find that community that can give you that support, the people who can encourage you and, like Felicia, give you the opportunities. And I've had so many of these mentors who, they didn't come in as mentors. They were just people I went to for advice. But then they helped to encourage me. They were a bouncing board for ideas. They gave me constructive advice. And I think being open to that constructive advice is really important. And just being willing to even just listen, even if there's no advice to be given, to just listen and to be present and be acknowledged, is a part of giving us strength, because sometimes, there are no answers. It's just a process. And I think that, like Felicia, so many people who have just said, you can write. So if you feel strongly about that, write about it, or take a picture and tell somebody, or do a workshop, and all the different opportunities that came up are what built this whole picture that is happening right now.
Wow, interesting. You brought so many different facets of mentorship that I think very interesting. I will discuss this further with you. Thanks so much, Debbie. How about Sharul? Sharul, you have a mentor in your montage as well, with Kumar, right, as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes.
So I'd like to say something that I don't actually believe in mentors. I have to say, because see, Kumar, and so I feel like in every stage of your life, you're going to have a few people who inspire you along the way. And why I say this is because, along my journey, at one point, I have had people who've advised me and inspired me, and we've had those shared experiences, and I'll always keep it in my bank of, inspiration, and I write it down. But I don't believe in mentors, because I also feel that mentors are very human. They are human beings. And even especially during the comedy circuit, we had a lot of men who were in whom I could call mentors, right? But because we are human, sometimes my mentor could be headlining the show and I am before my mentor. And, we count laughs. We are artists, and artists can be insecure about these things. So I feel like I made heroes, and then I got disappointed. So I feel that I don't make heroes out of anybody anymore. So I always go back to my parents now, if anything, and I understand that they are very human. They've made all the mistakes, and they've also been victorious in whichever way, being immigrant parents, moving here and actually starting up, having a career and raising 3 daughters from ground up. So I see them as my mentors, if anything, and I keep going back to them, even for life lessons. Right. So yes, I'd like, but I'd like to thank, now that we're here, I'd like to thank Samantha as well, actually, because there was a time in drama school and she was directing a play, and I asked her, and that's the thing, right? When people who inspire you, like I asked her, can I just come in? I would like to direct in the future at some point. Can I come in and sit in your play rehearsal? And Samantha said in her chirpy, she's like, of course, yeah, come. And she did that. I was like, oh, that was easy. That was nice. And then she was like, yeah, just have a conversation with me. And then so you can always talk. And then I was like, yeah, this is nice it's very important to state this, because I think that, and not only because she's a director first, I think, but also women need to be more open to each other in helping each other, just teaching. And, it's just giving, and I think we need to be more open in teaching each other. I think women need to help each other grow in whichever way possible. Yeah.
Thank you for the perspectives. Yeah. Thank you so much. And finally, Samantha, before I wrap up today's quick online book launch session, Samantha, what do you have to say about mentorship, or being a mentor for that matter?
I didn't know I talked like that. So funny. Oh no, I that story is lovely. I maybe just quickly, I directed a play titled Tuesdays with Maury. Mel, you would probably remember, and it's all about the mentorship that American professor Maury Schwartz provided author Mitch Albom. And you may be familiar with the book of the same name, Tuesdays with Maury. And Maury had a line in that play that just stays with me all the time. And that line is, everyone needs a coach. And I like that word. And I believe in that, that whether young or old, there's always something to be learned. And the irony of the play is that in the end, the young writer became a coach to his old professor. So I'm reminded that, mentorship happens both ways. And that even if you are young, you have something to say. So I encourage all the young people to have the courage to say it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And maybe finally, I want to actually talk about one last, maybe get Xin Li to actually say something, because I think he's been listening in for a while. Like, Xin Li, because for you, you were an architect and you became an illustrator full time. What kind of mentorship did you receive and how did it help you make that transition?
Mentorship. For architecture and illustration, I don't think there's exactly a mentor per se, but we have peers in the industry that have been around for a long time. So when I started doing illustration like full time, or even like when I was still working in DP, it's really just figuring out how things work, how to run things. And sometimes I'm glad that I managed to meet people who have been in the industry for a long time. They are even though like they can share experience on how to handle things, can be as technical as how to set up things on Photoshop to something about running the business. But more often than not, what I realized that it's while the seniority doesn't really matter that much, it's just getting to share and with experience from different people. Sometimes it even can be beyond just the illustration and architecture field, because there are certain skills that are universal. So when it comes to running the business aspect of it, there are people who are like, they tell you about, how do you register APRA, how do you go GP, all that, which can be very technical and boring, but everyone has to have something to share that is useful and likewise, like it's just not exclusive to a certain field. So, especially during COVID, it's still ongoing. Lee Ming is the writer of the Works of the Man. So even though he doesn't do illustration, but we do share different experience of how we go through life, how we tackle and deal with people, and also how we manage stress. Sometimes even beyond, we go cycle together. So it's more, I think, when it comes to learning, because he's inside and he has different kind of life experience, from agency to working agency, I think he also worked for Mothership, and like all the different kind of experience in the industry, and now running work ceremony with Chua. They all have different ways of approaching things that they are still applicable to what you're doing as well. So I think it's that aspect, like really the most important part is that to be able to be daring to share the experience and also be honest about what you don't know and learn from people who know things, and also be able to be critical of what you are listening to. So when I started out, there are some things that maybe when they talk about IP rights, or even how they do about social media, some of the small veteran illustrators also struggle with that. They might give you advice, but you have to be able to discern the kind of advice, the tips they give to you. And also then there's the younger folks also sometimes like maybe they are not so experienced in, say, giving quotation or evaluating their works, but they have different kind of ways of thinking, or even their experience in social media is definitely more savvy. I still don't understand how to work with TikTok, but you need to understand the relevance in today's society, and knowing and trying to humble yourself and accept that they are definitely better than me. And it can be someone in the family that's younger, like my niece and nephew. My nephew is so much younger, he's primary school and doing coding already. So if you are the conventional perception of what a mentor is, they can come from everywhere and every age. It's really on us to be humble and accept that we don't know a lot of things, and that's where you can learn things.
Thanks, Sidley. Yeah, like the idea that you have to be ready to receive wisdom and also be discerning about it, as what Sharul says, that often the heroes your perceived heroes may let you down as well. So it's also on our end in terms of how we want to be mentored as well. Yeah. Thanks so much, Xin Li. Thank you so much for joining us for this session and hearing from some of the interviewees featured in We Are Singaporeans Volume 2. So the details of it, I think, are found in the chat, or wherever you're watching this link, there should be some link to buy the books, but they are available in Times bookstores, Kinokuniya, Lazada, Shopee, Amazon at this moment, and eventually it will be available in more international platforms as well. Not wrong. Maybe I could get Mindy in at this point to help wrap things up. Mindy, you want to say something?
Hi everybody. Thank you so much for making the time. So appreciative of all our contributors for coming today. I think as a publisher, we are honestly really excited always to see people who dare to do the things that they enjoy, to pursue what they think is relevant, may not be the things that they've always grown up and taught to be doing. And so it's the most important thing, I think, as a publisher, to lead the way forward and just really offer space and the outreach to reach anybody who wants to actually find out or know that there can be difference, there can be achievements, there can be struggle, and that even if you're struggling, even if you're achieving, even if you're successful at any point of your own journey, there is a community, and this is the community. And so I thank all contributors for paving the way forward for everyone, and also generously sharing your time, your life, your stories with everyone and with Melanie. So Melanie and Xin Li, you've been such wonderful, really bring out the stories, bring out what's, I think, the gems and the essence of their stories, their lives. And Xin Li, how he has such an eye for detail, don't you think? So thank you also, everyone.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you around.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
People or online. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.